Hello, I'm a recovering addict named Richard coming at you from Recovery Resources here in sunny South Florida. In the previous video, we discussed a little bit about the nature of addiction and the nature of active addiction and the hopelessness and pointlessness of the existence that people live in active addiction. I talked a bit about how I struggled and how I suffered as a using addict and my inability to find any appropriate help. At the time, there just really wasn't a lot of information around about the nature of addiction itself. And I was very, very confused about what my problem was. I really didn't recognize the fact that I was an addict. I just couldn't stop using the drugs that I was using. But I supposed that to be an addict, you had to use on a daily basis. You had to have a physical need for something. And that's not the case. I learned a lot about that as I went along. Along the way, I did a lot of harm to a lot of people and to myself. I harmed my family. I caused them a great deal of anguish and sorrow and heartache and anger. And, they were confused by my actions and choices. And, I really didn't know how to account for myself to them. I didn't have any solid information to provide them. Nobody did at the time. We just did the best we could with what we had. I guess we all had picked up certain ideas about addiction as we went along. We never really had any formal training in that. So what I hope to do in this video series is to provide you with information about the nature of addiction so that we have a clear understanding of what it actually is. Because if you don't know what you're recovering from, how do you know if you're recovering? This video series may make some people very uncomfortable, and it may bring comfort to others. And I've often said I'm here to disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed, and I don't mind that. Anyway, when I looked at the harm I've done to myself, when I looked at the harm that I'd done to my family and loved ones and the people that cared about me, when I looked at the opportunities that I was throwing away, never being able to live up to my potential, it caused me a great deal of heartache, and every time I tried to stop using and failed, I lost hope. And I ended up, towards the end, in a state of complete and utter hopelessness. And hopelessness is not consistent with a strong desire to go on living, okay? And this is why some addicts end up putting a gun in their mouth or laying on the railroad tracks or some such thing like this, intentionally overdosing, because they just can't take it. The hopelessness it pervades our lives, and we feel completely lost, alone, and isolated. And you don't have to feel that way. You really don't. You're not alone. There are plenty of people just like you and just like me out there. And there are people like you and me who are addicts who have found recovery. And we're going to walk through that together. And I'm going to lead you there step by step. Let's take a look at some of the things that are available to addicts as it stands now. Here in South Florida, 2016, this is the treatment center hub of the world. Okay, there are more treatment centers here than there are anywhere else. Okay, the concentration of treatment centers is enormous, but it's not limited to South Florida. I mean, they're in California, they're in Tennessee, they're all over the place. Okay, when the treatment industry began treating substance abuse in its infancy, and I'd like to think that that's when I got into it back in 1986. I was 20 years old and had lost my desire to stay alive. Okay, I didn't want to live anymore. I couldn't take it. And I ended up, through a court, being referred to a treatment center. And I had a lot of misgivings about this. I was angry because I was certain I wasn't an addict. I didn't have a problem like those people did. And I had a very dim view of what addicts were. When I got there, I was surrounded by other people who were very much like me. None of them knew anything about how to recover and stay clean. All we knew about was using, and that's what we talked about in this treatment center. There were some really important things that happened to me there, though. I was staying clean. I mean, I was there for 30 days, and during that 30 days, I didn't use. And that was the first time in years that had been the case. I was really struck by the fact that I could get through a couple of days and not put something in my body. Now, I felt the cravings for sure, and that's perfectly normal for an addict. That's what we do. It's in our DNA, as I explained in the previous video. It's perfectly normal to want to use and have those cravings. The issue becomes, what do we do about it? Okay, and we're going to get into some of that. The addiction treatment center industry in those days was, again, kind of young, and it did some good for a lot of people. What is morphed into today is something very different again. Back then, the cost of treatment was nominal. Okay, the insurance would pay for it, and you could get into treatment centers, even a really inexpensive one, pretty easy. These days, treatment has become a multi-billion-dollar industry throughout the world. It has become a license to print money. They have very sophisticated video commercials on TV and radio ads and newspaper ads and help for addiction come to us. And they do good things in treatment centers. And let me say this at the outset, that there are some very good treatment centers out there. There are, okay? And if you go to a treatment center, it's not a bad idea, okay? You can find help even in a treatment center that isn't set up right. I mean, you can at least get that 30 days of clean time before you end up back out on the street. It gets you away from the people that you were hanging around with and using with. It gets you out of that pattern that you've been in and puts you in a place where it's relatively safe, where you can start talking to somebody like a counselor or therapist and start to learn more about what addiction is and recovery is. So for those purposes, they're quite good. There are a couple of problems with, more than a couple. And having said that, there are some fine people working in the treatment center industry that do a good job and that are there to help. Okay. Having said that, and having said that, there are some fine treatment centers out there. From here in, I'm not pulling any punches. Okay. I worked as a charge nurse in several treatment centers and detoxes. Okay. As a registered nurse, I was in the front lines. I was on the trenches, okay? And I could see what was going on with the addicts, and I could see what was going on with the institution itself. I sat through meetings of staff and listened to management talk about things, and what I found was really very, very sad, very disappointing, very disillusioning, what's going on in these treatment centers. Let's talk about, for example, the cost of going to treatment now. The average cost of a treatment center for a 30-day stay is anywhere between, and it varies from one to another, but on average, and you can look this up on Google, all right, it's not something I'm making up, between $18,000 and $35,000 per stay. That's for a 30-day stay. Now, if you have a 100-bed facility and you have every bed filled every month, you can see why I say it's a license to print money, okay? And, from there, it's very easy to focus on keeping the beds filled, keeping the coffers of the corporation filled, okay, rather than focusing on what the true message of recovery needs to be, okay? One of the first things that they're going to ask you if you go to a treatment center is, why are you here? Why are you trying to get help? Why do you want to get clean? And very often the addict in this situation says something along the lines of, well, my children were taken away from me by the court and I miss them terribly, and they're in tears and they're just suffering, and this is one of the things that's motivated them to do something as drastic as going to treatment. They have found that they're desperate, okay? They're absolutely desperate for help, and they want their children back, or they want their spouse back, and then they remember the love that they had with this person that they married or that they've been with for some considerable amount of time, and how they destroyed that trust and how they destroyed that relationship, or the looks on the faces of their parents or their other loved ones who looked at them aghast, just, how could you do this? You did what? And they feel terribly guilty. And this is one of the things that brings them to the treatment center. So when they're asked, okay, why are you here? Why are you coming here for help? They'll say, well, because, I want to have my children back. I miss my kids and I'm heartbroken. Or, I've hurt the people that I love, or I've hurt myself and I'm not ever going to live up to the potential. I've lost these jobs. And they talk about all these losses that they've had. And 99 times out of 100, what happens is the person interviewing them will say, oh, well, no, stop, wait, don't say that. You can't do it for those reasons. You have to do it for yourself, okay? There's some validity in that, okay, in that, yeah, we have to want to get clean for ourselves, because deep down, if we don't want it for ourselves, then it's not going to work for us. On the other hand, harming our children by having them pulled away from us, or having put them in a dangerous situation, okay? Harming them and feeling guilty about that, and wanting to have no more of that guilt and remorse and shame. Isn't that also helping me? Isn't that part of why I'm here? Isn't that one of the most fundamental reasons that I want to partake of a different kind of life? Isn't that the reason? Okay, or at least one of the glaring ones, that I don't want to cause harm and pain to the people I love? That's important. And to discount that at the outset when somebody enters a treatment center does them a disservice. You need to look at this kind of stuff. You need to look at the things that have caused you so much pain and suffering in your life, and the pain and suffering that you've caused to other people. Yeah, these are important things. Okay? One of the other things they'll ask you is, what was your drug of choice? Okay, drug of choice implies that there was one particular substance or behavior that you had a problem with, okay? And when we look at things in that way, it's kind of necessary in the beginning, because, you know, okay, it's X drug that brought me to my knees, and it's X drug that's the problem. And it's important to focus on what that drug is. But it's not so important at all in the final analysis on recovery. It doesn't matter what we use. Recovery is recovery. It doesn't matter if I'm recovering from addiction to bath salts, or pornography, or gambling, or overeating. You know, there's people that weigh 700-800 pounds. Why? Because they're addicts, okay? Not because they don't understand what a good diet is, okay? But because they're addicts. They're filling some need inside themselves with food, okay? And every time they eat and gain weight, they feel worse about themselves, which becomes a vicious cycle, and they continue to eat and eat and eat. And I've met these people in the hospital, okay? I work in an ICU now, and have for many years, and I've seen these people, 700 pounds. They can't even move, okay? And when I talk to them, when I go and talk to these people, okay, you know, nobody has been able to reach them, but I can, you know, because I talk to them about what's in here. I talk to them about their feelings. I talk to them about their emotions. What drives that food going into their mouth, you know? And when I do, more often than not, they start crying. They're like, nobody's ever explained it to me this way before. Usually they've tried to give me the Atkins diet or this diet or that diet in hopes that if I had enough education, I'd know how to eat in a different way. Sometimes I've had moderate success with this. Most often they don't. Oftentimes doctors don't understand the problem either, okay? They're telling them, oh, you need to count calories and, you know, avoid carbohydrates. You think these people don't know this? They do, okay? They're just addicts, just like me, okay? And potentially just like you. So the term drug of choice, what it really does is sets up a division. You know, if I think that my only problem was alcohol, for example, then I can feel different or perhaps better than somebody that injects heroin, okay? I could, well, this is legal and that is not, therefore I'm okay. Lots of people drink alcohol, you know, and heroin junkies, they're just, you know, scumbags. Okay, and the thought is that, you know, the drug of choice makes us somehow different. It doesn't. Addiction makes us all one and the same, because it's not about the particular substance that you're using. It's about why. It's about why we're using. That's what's fundamentally important. Why are we using these drugs? Why are we shoving the food in our body? Why can't I stay faithful to my wife? Why am I always at the track spending money I don't have and losing it all? You know, why am I continuously smoking this drug that people think is not addictive, but I can't stop? Okay? Because it's not the drug that's addictive, it's us. Okay? That's the point. You know, and this point was brought home to me when I went to the treatment center in 1986. One of the things that they focused on the substance one thing at a time and helped me to break down my denials. And I was never going to give up drinking, that was for sure. And this counselor, she asked me this question, and I'll never forget it. She said, you know, And I said, I'm not an alcoholic. You know, I thought an alcoholic meant that if I didn't have it, I'd have the shakes and DTs and stuff like that. And that wasn't me. Or if I didn't have it on a daily basis, you know, that meant I wasn't an alcoholic. I was very, very uninformed. And she asked me this question. And she asked me, have you ever had a drink of alcohol with any idea other than trying to get a buzz? And I thought about that. And I thought, well, not really. You know, and I thought about my stepdad. You know, I mean, he could drink half a beer, set it down, leave it alone the rest of the day, never go back to it, never even think about it. And to me, that was just not something that I could do. I didn't understand that behavior at all. I didn't understand it. And this is what makes an addict an addict. It's why we're putting this into our body. It's not whether it's legal or not, or prescribed by a doctor, or served through a restaurant, or whatever. It's not that. It's not the substance that's addictive. It's us. It's in here. It's filling this emptiness, this vast void within us, this never feeling good enough, never measuring up to the people around us. And because of that, having to feel superior to them. And maybe, you know, for example, if we're playing baseball, trying to show my physical prowess in that, to compensate for the lack of self-esteem that I really feel. I'm trying to have things that other people don't have. I might have a Porsche and fix it up. I might have this or that. I might go to the gym for 3.5 hours a night and work out and weigh 225 and have 8% body fat, okay? And bench crazy amounts of weight. Why? Because I don't feel okay in here. And if I fix the outside, then I'm going to feel okay. Okay? So drug of choice, it really sets up division. It makes people feel different from other people, when the reality is addiction makes us one of a kind. All the same. Okay? It's just a matter of different manifestations. Let me explain it. Okay? If I have a cold, and I have a runny nose, and a sore throat, and a fever, okay, I can take medicine to clear up the runny nose. I can take cough drops to clear up the sore throat. And I can take Tylenol to get rid of the fever. I can do that, right? But does that mean I don't have a cold anymore? No, it doesn't. And if I'm an addict and I stop using drugs, does that mean I'm not an addict anymore? No, it doesn't. Because once I remove my chief coping mechanism, be it the drug or the food or whatever, I'm going to end up finding something else. I'm just abstinent at that point. And I'm looking for something to fill that vacancy. And this is what keeps a lot of people, okay, from getting clean in the first place, or even trying to. Because they don't believe that there's something out there that's better than what they're doing now. The thing that they're doing now, whatever drug they're doing, whether it's alcohol or whatever, is the one thing in this world that has worked for them, even for a moment, to make them feel okay. All right? So if you're going to tell me I have to get rid of that, you better have something better. Okay? And I do. And you can have it. Okay? There is hope. You can live without it. Okay? You can live a life better than you ever dreamed possible. You can be free. You can have yourself back. You can have your self-esteem. You can look in the mirror and be grateful for who you are for once. Okay? That's what recovery is about. It's about filling that void in there. It's about patching it over. Okay? And being okay. And we're going to get there. And I'm going to help you.